As you all know, in April 2024, Emami Art opened a major research-based retrospective scale exhibition of Indian modernist KG Subramanyan, curated by curator and cultural theorist Nancy Adajania. Marking his birth centenary year, this wide-ranging and critical survey, the largest in eastern India after his death, resituates, reassesses, and the artist in the larger cultural scenario of post-colonial India's unfolding modernism and affirms the continuing relevance of his practice. So today, as we already mentioned, KCC Conservation Lab, along with Emami Art, is excited to present an in-depth panel discussion highlighting the conceptual significance, material use, artistry, and the challenges of preserving KG Subramanyan's murals. Needs absolutely no mention, but to sort of request the panelists, the speakers to come on board, I would like to briefly introduce all of them. Professor Siva Kumar is an Indian contemporary art historian, educator, art critic, and curator. His primary research has been in early Indian modernism, focusing on the Santiniketan school. He has written several influential books, lectured widely on modern Indian art, and contributed articles to prestigious international projects such as the Art Journal, Grove Art Online, the Dictionary of Art, and Oxford University Press, and many more. He was awarded the Kesari Purushkaram for writing art by the Lalit Kala Academy in Kerala in 2010. He has also curated major retrospective exhibitions like Binod Bihari's Scroll, which we saw in KCC in the last year, Santiniketan, the Making of Contextual Modernism, The Last Harvest, paintings of Rabindranath Tagore, and retrospective of Indian artists such as Rabindranath Tagore, Binod Bihari Mukherjee, and KG Subramanyan alike. He is the recipient of Raza Fellowship for his book on biography of KG Subramanyan, an Indian painter. There is so much about Shivda we can say, but I will keep it brief. And Shivda currently lives in Santiniketan and works there. Shivda, I would request you to please have you take your seat. Thank you for accepting our request to be a part of the panel. Next, I would like to introduce Professor Dilip Mitra, an alumnus of the Government Art and Craft College in Kolkata, and he's also an alumnus of the Vishwabharati University, Santiniketan. He has been featured in more than 30 national and international shows, including Sarja Art Gallery in Vadodara, Academy of Fine Arts, Birla Academy, Sanskriti Art Gallery, Jahangir Art Gallery in Mumbai, and Jeju Contemporary Art Museum in South Korea. Besides participating and facilitating many art workshops on serigraphy, painting, and murals, Mitra has extensively experienced the making of murals, executed them in diverse mediums like ceramic, tempera, and oil. Apart from spearheading multiple ceramic, oil, and tempera murals, Mitra has contributed significantly to mural projects led by stalwart artists such as KG Subramanyan and Ganesh Hallo. Mitra is currently a professor at the Department of Painting, Kala Bhavan, Vishwabharati, Santiniketan. I would request Dilip Mitra to come and take your seat. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Shri Amit Danda. He is an alumnus of Government Art and Craft College in Kolkata and Kala Bhavan, Vishwabharati, Santiniketan. Between 1987 and 1989, he served as an artist at the Regional Center of Lalit Kala Academy in Calcutta. Noteworthy accolades include the East India Photographic Traders Association Award in 1987 and Oriental Art Society Award for 3 consecutive years from 1982 to 1985. Additionally, Danda received the Junior Fellowship from the Ministry of Human Resource Development since 1992 and also in 1996. His tenure as a Deputy Curator at Nandan Museum in Vishwabharati, Santiniketan spanned from 2023 to 2021. Having closely associated KG Subramanyan for over 30 years at Santiniketan, Danda has significantly contributed to the education and scholarship of visual arts students in the region. Currently, he lives in Santiniketan and practices there. Danda, please come and take your seat. Thank you. And now I would like to invite my dear colleague Shreyan Banerjee. He is the Senior Art Conservator from the KCC Conservation Lab. He will moderate the session and as well briefly introduce the KCC Conservation Lab and kickstart the panel discussion. Thank you. Shreyan, can I have you?
Thanks, Choiti, for your introduction and good evening everyone. এই সেশনটা bilingual হবে তো I'll just introduce KCC Conservation Lab briefly. So the KCC Conservation Lab, formerly known as the Kolkata Institute of Art Conservation, had been set up at KCC in 2018 to address the need for a modern art conservation and restoration facility in West Bengal and the eastern region of India. Beyond conserving and restoring artworks, the lab offers consultancy services for collection care, provides training, and facilitates research and discourses in art heritage conservation. Equipped to handle a diverse array of art pieces from oil paintings, miniatures, manuscripts, and old rare books to textiles and decorative objects, the lab caters to the region's conservation needs. In its journey, the lab has emerged as a leading force in Indian conservation scene. Since its inception as part of the Tata Trust Art Conservation Initiative, the lab has embraced modern, conscious, and sustainable practices. The team initially assembled for the Tata Trust project has evolved into a skilled entity advocating for heritage and conservation awareness and spearheading conversations on art preservation. Moving forward, KCC Conservation Lab, we call it KCCCL, aims to expand its capacity and outreach efforts. Plans include offering improved workshops and apprenticeship opportunities, collaborating with more subject-specific experts, artisans, and enriching the conservation landscape with modern and indigenous infrastructure and methodologies. As for today's program is concerned, not only art enthusiasts, we as conservation professionals also have always been curious about the materials and technicalities involved in Manida's murals. To explore the rich material heritage, the phenomenal artistry, and document them should be a major aspect of preservation of our cultural and art masterpieces. Until and unless we know the methods and materials well, it is hardly possible to intervene in terms of restoration. So today, after Shivda's insightful presentation on Manida's murals as a whole, and especially the earlier ones, we shall delve deeper into his understanding of materials, their uses, and the way he interpreted them. Dilip da আর অমিত দা আছেন, ওনাদের দীর্ঘদিনের অভিজ্ঞতা মানিদার সাথে কাজ করার, তো সেগুলো স্লাইডের থ্রু আমরা দেখতে পাবো এবং মানিদার ম্যাটেরিয়াল ইউজ এবং স্টেপ বাই স্টেপ কীভাবে সেই জিনিসগুলো হয়ে উঠলো আমরা সবাই দেখেছি এই মিউরালগুলো ফিজিক্যালি বা বইতে। তো সেগুলোর আজকে একটা ইনডেপথ আমরা একটা ইন্ট্রোডাকশন পাবো। So I would request Shivda to come over and begin with your presentation.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for asking me to be present today and talk about Manida's work as a muralist. Well, I shall try to be a little brief because we have two other people who have worked with Manida, who has personal experiences which is different from mine, and so they will have many things to tell you, stories, details, and so on. So what I'll do is try to take you through the work he did before they both came onto the scene and began to help him. So I will talk a little bit about that. Now, his first experience of doing murals was when he assisted Binod Bihari as a student in Santiniketan. Now, this was a very unusual opportunity. Not many people got that kind of opportunity to work with Binod Bihari. And Binod Bihari certainly was one of the greatest muralists of the modern period in India. I mean, this mural, for instance, a scholar friend from England, Timothy Hyman, has argued that this is probably the single most important work done in India in the modern period. So this has a very special place in the history of modern Indian art, and he was one of the artists who helped him. And Binod Bihari was very particular that he worked all by himself, unlike Nandalal, who always had a team and allowed the team to contribute to it. Binod Bihari was somebody who worked entirely by himself for different reasons, because first of all, he couldn't see well, so he had developed a method which was his own, so he wanted to keep full control over the work method and as it progresses and so on. But the only exception in a sense was that he allowed Subramanyan to do a little bit of painting in this mural. The two horses at the bottom were painted by Subramanyan. So that is a very rare thing, and that was the first kind of thing, and a couple of little small figures. But nobody else there were three people who assisted him, in the early part of the mural, but none of them got an opportunity to work alongside Binod Bihari. So that was his first thing. But he didn't take to murals immediately. That experience was there, and he thought this was a great learning experience working with Binod Bihari. But it didn't lead him to kind of paint murals immediately. It took some time. And really speaking, when you think about murals, before the modern period, before the 15th, 16th century, murals was one of the most common things that artists did. Whether you look in India or in Europe, these two cultures, there was nothing called panel painting, nothing really called canvases at that time. Everybody did murals. It's only after the High Renaissance and after miniature painting came to India, High Renaissance in Europe and miniature painting in India, that we moved away from murals. Murals became less important. And in the modern period, it became even actually much less important, because the idea is art is an independent art object which you can carry from place to place, and it will eventually, art has to end up in museums. That was the concept. And also the idea of individuality really didn't contribute to the sustenance of mural. Exceptions are there, like in Mexico. So only where you're thinking in terms of building up a society with interconnections and art playing a role in that social structuring, only there murals make a good appearance in the modern period, which is very rare. Even in Mexico, it was a comparatively short-lived period. The other place was Santiniketan, where this idea of murals came, and there Rabindranath wanted murals and other art objects in the public space to play a similar role. So Subramanyan was aware of that, and that contributed to his development, but not immediately. The first mural he did is a 12 feet, actually it will be more than that, because there were two sets of panels. This is the left side, which shows industry, and that is about 4 into 12 feet, and there's a similar panel that he did. Now, this is not really a part of his kind of main body of work as a muralist. This is what normally many artists across the world, in India and in Calcutta, also do. That is, when you get a public commission, you have to earn a little money, it's a good opportunity, and you do that. And Subramanyan was selected for a scholarship to go to England, and he didn't have the money to buy warm clothes and other things. So a kind of friend offered, why don't you do a little mural for me? And so he took up the opportunity and did this mural. It was done for the Jyoti Limited. They made at that time, they used to make, basically agricultural implements and pumps. Now they do many other things. So he had this work where you have workers in a kind of factory, then moving on to the other thing, how that goes into the agricultural field and helps in agriculture. And so, but in a sense, except for the idea that there is a lateral movement in this, which is something that murals really, any good muralist will know and do. Otherwise, it's not one of those very significant works as a mural. Now, you can see that when he began with a lot of detailing. and more realistic rendering of figures, etc., which when he painted, he reduced and so on. So those things he did, but still I wouldn't think that this is one of those landmark murals he did. And it actually has similarities with what people at that time did. I mean, this is, for instance, the cotton exchange, which shows, cotton being, planted, being, cotton plants being harvested, and then the thing going to the factories and then being exported, etc. Or others like Pansare, for instance. So basically you can see that he wasn't really breaking the mold in these kind of work. Then the next mural he did is when he came back from England, and then Bandre, his senior in the department, asked him to do something, and he was supposed to leave the faculty for a while. So he did this, which reflects what he normally did at that time in his paintings. I mean, this is not a cartoon or a sketch for the mural, but you can see similarities between them. So this too is not where he has really thought about being a muralist. The first important mural that he did is this one at Lucknow. And there, of course, he comes into himself as a great muralist. It was his first serious effort, so he planned it very much. He tried how he will think about it, how he will break the figures. He did various exercises for that. And he did very elaborate, this is just a detail, he did the entire mural more than once in drawing. And you can see that he, in this one, for instance, he's thinking more about the volumes, etc. The next one, probably more in terms of the units and so on. And finally, you can compare the final product and the thing. So there was an effort on his part to really work on this and to build up. But what really made it, and this was a commission, and he probably was more personally invested in this commission. It was for a theater in Lucknow, and this was part of the Tagore centenary. And as many of you might know, that to celebrate the centenary of Rabindranath, they made a number of theaters across India. The government did produce theaters across India in many big and small cities, and there was this theater in Lucknow which was being made for that, called the Ravindralaya. And so he picked on one of Rabindranath's play as the subject matter for the thing, which, as you know, is The King of the Dark Chamber, or Arubratan. And so it's a narrative. Now, this is also an important change in his whole attitude, because as you know, that modern artists thought about works of art as totally independent, visually kind of self-contained objects. I mean, they would do away with literature, storytelling, other things are not part of painting. But when he came to do the mural, and he was a painter like that, but when he began to think about doing a mural, and he wanted to base it on Rabindranath's play, he had to bring in narration. So this is one of the things that happens. So how do you break down a story into units? Now, here probably he might have thought of other people, like Nandalal, for instance, when he did Nadir Puja. He too had to take a play and break it down into narrations, into 8 or 9 sequences, and Subramanyan works in a similar way with this play. As most of you will know the play, I am not going into details. So it starts with the queen and a maid, then it moves on. Of course, you know the queen, is married to this king who cannot be seen in daylight, who has to be visited and met in a dark chamber, so which she is quite unhappy with. And the queen is having this conversation with her maid. That is how it begins. And then the maid is trying to convince her. She is unhappy, so she stands on the balcony, looks at the spring festival and all the people who are there, and mistakes an impostor for her actual husband and king. And that is where it comes. And then, of course, these impostors put fire to the garden, and the impostor, the king who makes her do that, and then she herself is kind of trying to escape from that fire. Then she is completely, unhappy about the situation. She decides to go back to her home, and there you see her leaving for the home. The kings pursue and want to conquer her father's kingdom and take her by force, but then the king arrives as an amorphous force, routs them, and you can see these little circular things which is routing them, and then they are defeated, and the queen really realizes that, she had to submit herself to this king of the dark chamber, and which she does. And at the end, you have the maid. She is, symbolizing with this little parrot in a garden a sense of fulfillment. Now, he does various things. One is that you will see that there's a subtle shift of the rhythm. This shows the beginning and the end of the mural. The first one, you can see the construction is all geometrical and very diagonal and kind of thing. And the last motif you can see is almost the opposite, very rhythmic, very organic, and so on. So there is a sense that you are, moving. As you move from the thing, the elements are changing. Again, I'm putting the first figural things and the end figural things. So you have this, contrast is one way of telling you the story in this. Besides, you should know the story if you want to read it, but besides that, there is also something he does with this medium. Now, one of the things he does, this is terracotta, by the way, and when he did about 13,000 units. And as you might have noticed, and some units are all multiples, because also when you fire terracotta, it can break. So you have to do additional things. So if you are going to have 10 heads, you should probably make 15 heads so that you make sure. And you can see each head is actually composed of various units. But you can have although in the earlier thing it looked as if they are all very same, but you can see when you organize them, you can improvise and make differences. Now, and one other important thing is that the units themselves are basically meaningless. They are geometric objects, little decorative objects, they don't have any meaning. But out of these meaningless objects, you can create a representational image. So there is a whole play, just like we have in the play itself, that moving from meaningless, non-semantic things to serious semantic things. So that is one of the ways. And using all of that little nuances you can bring into the playing of objects one against the other, that is how he builds. In fact, those who have been into modern linguistic theories will immediately recognize the whole idea of moving from meaningless units or signs to meaningful sentences or statements or whatever kind of thing. So he is working, he is also at this point experimenting with visual language. And this was there in his painting. He takes it from there into the mural. So he's enlarging his vision in the 60s, and this is finished and completed in 1963, and he is, bringing things from his one area of activity into another. And just before he did this, and around the same time as he was doing it, he was also doing murals in textiles, which is an unusual thing, but none of them were documented, so we don't have access to them. And this is a photograph of him actually doing the mural, and you can see it is its height, and it's more or less done like, traditional artists would have done mosaic murals. Mosaics originally were not done like what we do today, arrange it on the floor and then paste it up with paper and then fix it on the wall. That's not how mosaics were done. Mosaics were actually done by pushing, little pieces of colored stone onto mortar. So it was directly worked. That is how ancient mosaics were done. And this is the way in which he actually did this mural in a way. But once he did this, he began to think about murals as a thing. And he was trying new mediums, and this is another aspect of his thing. He didn't do any mural in traditional mediums. He always did murals. Each mural is in a different thing. As I said, he did textile murals, which were, printed, hand painted, and sometimes, woven actually. So each work he did was in a different medium, and he was experimenting constantly with this. So this is sand cast cement, and he was planning something. So he did before that this mural in Baroda. This is in the faculty, and it's a two-part mural kind of thing. On the top you have a abstract symbol that probably signifies the sun, and the bottom a lotus pond where flowers are blooming, and which again has a Rabindranath poem probably at the back of his mind. And there was also a second aspect to this way of working. He was assisted by a very good mural technician, but he never wanted the mural technician's traditional knowledge to influence his work. He always wanted the others who were working kind of incorporate or work with him. Maybe the kind of, traditional engineering skills were more important to him than how this mural is to paint. He was a Rajasthani muralist, so he was very good in Arayas, and you can see he never painted in Arayas. And although that was something that Santiniketan artists often did. The next one was probably even more important. It was in Delhi, in this place called Gandhi Darshan, and it was Gandhiji's centenary, and he was very close to both these people in terms of his ideas, in terms of his thing. He began as a nationalist, fighting for the freedom movement. He was drawn very much to Gandhi. He participated in the Quit India movement, went to jail and so on. So Gandhi meant a lot to him, and similarly Rabindranath. So these were the two people, who really meant a great deal to him. So the first mural he did for Rabindranath, the second one is about Gandhi. And here he opens up much further. It consists of three independent structures, not all fixed onto the wall. One is fixed, the other is thing. So from these photographs, you might be able to reconstruct how they think. It's a big quadrangle, and you enter through one wall. As you enter, you will see this piece here, and then the other thing. So you have three walls, and I will take you through that, but this is how it is kind of thing. You can see all of them separately, and you can see the quadrangle because it's the height, and you get a sense of the space that was there. Of course, now that his drawings are becoming very schematic, he didn't do elaborate drawings, and this becomes a characteristic of his way of working. In all the murals, he never did elaborate drawings. Even if he tried something on a model, which of course Amit often made models of buildings for him in Santiniketan, he might have worked on it, but that work and the final mural don't tally. He's just trying out certain basic ideas there. So this is the first piece where you can see actually there are statements now in the mural. At the top, there is some lettering, if you can see. This is a quotation that was very dear to Gandhi, which Gandhi often quoted from the Gita, which says every man finds fulfillment through dedicated pursuit of work. So this is about the Gandhian ideal of work, of cooperation, and the progress through mutual cooperation. So it's a circle of hands, if you want to say. It is also like a sun image, a seed blooming image, which was again you find very often in his work. And we will notice, I'll go into the details a little later, there are two panels on the side which really has various objects of small industrial production, craft production, which was again something which Gandhi kind of thing. The second one was based on Gandhi's idea of the villages, and you can see again a few structures he took the grain chest that very often people used in the Gujarat villages and turned it into a bovine figure or a Kamadhenu-like figure. So you have this figure, and on the two wings, actually you see ground plans of villages. So in a sense, it is the image of a prosperous village. And again on the top, this quotation is there in Hindi, which reads, "If the villages of India perish, India also perishes." This is from the side, so there is an extension for this thing. The whole chest is made, part of the chest is visible from the front, and that becomes a bovine deity of some kind. The third is a kind of structure, like almost like a notice board, plus if you see from the sides, it looks like a kind of gateway, and that contains in the center all these images of various real and imagined religions. These were, textile pieces pressed between, pieces of plastic. And on the side, the gate-like thing, you can have statements like this: God has many names, and therefore and as many creatures as in the world, and therefore we call him nameless, and so on. And he has many forms, and therefore we call him formless, and so on. Now, this is how the mural looked in the thing. And you can see the side panels. I just want to take you through how the process of the making. Many of these things were done by craftsmen in a nearby, ceramic production center. And later, they got assembled like that. On the site, the sand cast was done. This is, Garsilal, who used to assist him. There were also students who went. This was done largely during the vacation, so there were students who assisted him as well. And the pieces are being cured on the site. The actual structure was a concrete structure in the thing, over which the other things are being placed, and so you get an idea of how he worked and how the whole mural was done. The next mural that he did is again for Jyoti Limited, their research and development wing, and that is 74. And you can see these murals are pretty big. It is about 15 meters in height, and you can see it's a narrow space. It is between a kind of two blocks of a building, and again it was a very important thing. And some of these things which I'm showing, I suddenly realize are also shown downstairs in the exhibition, that how the sand casting was done. That shows him sitting and working in the sand casting using very simple tools like little blocks which he kind of pushes into the thing or draws into the thing. So the whole idea is the skill inputs are, if you think about it, not the most prominent part of it. It's the coming together of various things. And of course, there was a technical problem. This is where somebody like Garsilal became very important, because this 15-meter thing, the walls was a normal building, and it was not meant to hold anything that heavy. It's 15 meters by 5 meters. So it's quite a large thing. And the weight of the whole thing would have brought the whole wall down. So this is where somebody like Garsilal comes and how he collaborates with him. Not in making of the image, which he always wanted to be a personal thing. What they did was they divided the whole mural into little parts, and each unit is then fixed onto the wall. So distribute the whole weight so that it doesn't really crash down. And it has stood. And this is where, his way of working or using traditional knowledge in a sense, not what he learned to paint. He would have painted the Rajasthani way of mural painting, which he doesn't do, but he is also somebody who can innovate, and this he valued a great deal. And finally, the mural comes. The mural, of course, you can read it in whichever way you want. There is one kind of reading downstairs, but this has again a sentence written. This is from the Katha Upanishad, which says that Ashwatha tree, eternal tree with its roots above and the branches below. Now, research, he thinks, is something like that. It is something that has its roots above, but its branches are spreading down. So in a sense, he thinks of this as a kind of symbolizing of what is done in the building. Research is something that starts above with the intellectual kind of thing, but the benefits of that flow downwards and reach the earth. And what is interesting is that this is a white on white mural. Now the photographs, because it is slightly, it's probably, there's some cleaning necessary, otherwise it would have been like a very shimmering kind of thing, maybe like the way you might look at fine textiles from Lucknow, the chicken curry, like kind of thing. Now that is the kind of thing you translate that into, kind of material which is, very kind of, it's made with cement and marble dust. So, and very heavy kind of objects, but then you translate it into that kind of a thing and create this image of something floating in the air. Now, I stop here because I think I don't want to take the time from these two people who will have many more interesting stories to tell you. But just before I end, I won't talk about it. Late in life, as you can see, he had a fall, he had kind of thing. Even then he worked, and he did his last mural, which, Dilip and Amit will show, after he had the fall. But he was completely unstoppable. So last two murals he did in a way on canvases. So the idea of murals remained with him, and he was also responding to much more than in the earlier ones to political events in this thing. The kind of unrest that was happening, and therefore he calls it conflict and conviviality. And the next one, the last one which he did, when actually he had just come out of the surgery, so he couldn't even stand up, but he was sitting, and he painted this entire mural about 40 feet, 8 by 40 feet, sitting and doing this. He broke up the whole thing into 16 canvases, and then he did this. So in a sense, he began his career as a muralist rather slowly, but then in the end, he was somebody who really wanted to do murals right till the end of his life. And he found something much deeper, and to speak, he thought the mural speaks to the viewers in many voices, and that is what he loved. And the two murals that they are going to show, especially one of them, will, 2 or 3 maybe, and really has this aspect of the appearing in different ways to the viewers. So thank you very much.